Good morning. It's been great to be with you over this past week. I live in Philadelphia. I think I've just about now adapted to the altitude when I'm leaving. But it's been great to soar some of these heights with you during this week. And I want to thank particularly Reverend Linda for all the ways that she's been very helpful in terms of hospitality and assistance in the groups that I've led this week, as well as in the worship. The reading this morning is perhaps a familiar one to most of us. We usually call this the Beatitudes. This particular section is from Matthew's, the gospel attributed to Matthew, chapter 5. And it reads, "When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him." In those times when a teacher sat down, you knew something profound was about to happen. I'm going to stay standing during the sermon. And Jesus began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." And then I wanted to also add these next verses that come in this particular chapter. "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. People do not light a lamp and put it under a bushel basket. Rather, they put it on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." My sermon reflections are entitled, "What is this blessed thing? What is this blessed thing about?" Now, any of us who have spent time in the South, as I have, know that the phrase "bless your heart" could be a genuine expression of sympathy and a compliment, or "bless your heart" could also be a catty expression, which, although it might sound as sweet as pie, or said affectionately, may mean something totally different. I quote from an authoritative article on the subject entitled "Your Southern Decoder." And it states that when a Southerner says, "bless your heart," it could actually mean you're pitiful and did something you shouldn't have done, but you were too dumb to know about it. In other words, bless your heart. Of course, sometimes, Southern or not, we could become suspicious about blessings or the bottom line efficacy of blessing. For some of us, it's a welcome and meaningful and edifying concept to feel blessed, to be blessed, or to offer a blessing to someone. For others of us, there may be a skepticism about the concept of blessing and being blessed by anyone. We come to appreciate over time that our reactions may depend on our own past experiences, our own capacities to listen for the intention underlying someone's words, and our own personal theology. Now, I discovered recently one Christian writer, Christy Thomas, in a blog article entitled "The Christian Word That Makes People Cringe," where she points out that the way we often use the word blessed in contemporary culture gives her the willies. When something good happens to us, we say we are blessed. And she includes this perspective. So can we agree, she writes, to stop throwing that word around so glibly? Because when we use blessed in our middle class North American way, the rest of the world interprets our words through their own circumstances. And if being blessed looks like a safe neighborhood and good kids and physical health, then it looks like the rest of the world is being cursed. Because they might not have those things. The same author points out that we can indeed be grateful for all the good things that happen to us. However, she argues that some of the common ways that we use the word or the phrase, "I am blessed," could indirectly imply that others who don't have those good things that you consider a blessing are cursed. Now, I think she has a good point about developing that sensitivity in us, but I also personally feel that sometimes when we say that we feel blessed, we're talking about an inner experience, a gratefulness, a sense of something that has happening in our lives that we did not necessarily accomplish. Make sense to you? Yeah. So I want to recognize the sensitivity that she's awakening in me as I read her blog, but I also want to recognize that there can be many ways to understand blessing as well. So what is this blessed thing? What could it mean according to Jesus' use of the word in what we've come to call the Beatitudes? Well, one thing for sure that it's not a counting your blessings kind of thing, like nice place to live, nice consumer goods, nice appliances, good teeth, etc. No, for Jesus, the word blessed comes from that Hebrew understanding of the word baruch. It's an inner state of being, not an outward appearance or possession. For Jesus to say blessed is a declaration of what already is, even if we can't see it right away. For Jesus to say blessed is also a declaration of what could be and what could come about if we participate in the work of the gospel. What is this blessed thing that Jesus is talking about? Even those who listen to Jesus' words may have been suspicious about his use of the word blessed as well. After all, who was he calling blessed? The poor, and the poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, those persecuted because of righteousness. I can imagine, and maybe you can too, that as we listen to this list of the blessed, I can imagine that maybe the people sitting there listening to Jesus, and maybe even us today, might be wondering, well, did I make the list? Scholars point out that Matthew's Sermon on the Mount is much more spiritualized than Luke's more egalitarian Sermon on the Plain. For Luke, the list includes, blessed are the poor. For Matthew, it's blessed are the poor in spirit. For Luke, the list includes, blessed are the hungry. For Matthew, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Do you see the difference? Now, I hold really that both perspectives are important. In other words, Jesus is declaring the poor as blessed and the hungry as blessed to say that they really do also, they are part of this reign of God that he is preaching about. That they are blessed even if for whatever reason we can't see through our own perspectives the blessing that they can be and that they are. And also Jesus is saying, blessed is that which could be. Could it be that we need to honestly and humbly recognize the shifts in our own way of being in order to truly embody this reign of God in the here and now? Not some far-off terrain, not just when our name is called up yonder, but right here and now. Practice and cultivate that pure of heart, that sense of being a peacemaker now, not some other time. So in our exploration of what is this blessed thing, I would propose that indeed blessing can be an inner state that we cultivate and not just an outward appearance. I would propose, as Jesus seems to indicate, that it's also a certain way of being in the world and a way of understanding what needs to be done in order to bring about the blessing. The blessing is, and the blessing is something that could be. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel amplifies for me some of this understanding of blessing when he writes, just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy. And yet being alive, he continues, is no answer to the problems of living. To be or not to be is not the question. The vital question is how to be and how not to be. Rabbi Marcia Prager invites us to consider this understanding of the blessing that already is, but we might not yet see it. She imagines, she says, every moment we are embraced in the world is a gift that is a blessing. In doing so, we can see that this blessing that we are already swimming in, we can begin to see it with fresh eyes and not just take it for granted, as we may sometimes do. She puts it this way: an apple is a gift. It's a blessing. The color pink is a gift. The blue sky is a gift. It's a blessing. The scent of honeysuckle honeysuckle is a gift. Hidden in every experience, she writes, is a gift, a blessing, inviting us to heart-filled appreciation, to songs of gratitude. Indeed, the more we acknowledge our gratefulness by pausing to bless or to receive the blessing of all that is that we encounter, the more we temper our tendency to be users, despoilers, or an arrogant occupier. Prager understands that the path of blessing in her tradition can be similar to a mindfulness practice as a way to awaken us to the potential gift within each moment's experience. This consciousness of blessing that we're already swimming in, that we're always swimming in, I think is a wonderful one to cultivate in ourselves, to counteract our tendency to take so much for granted, our tendency to sometimes miss the wonder of what already is. This week in the group that we had on poetry as a tool for wellness, I introduced some poems by John O'Donohue. John O'Donohue is the Irish poet and a writer about Celtic Christianity, and he took several years to compile his book of blessings in a poetry form in a book entitled Bless the Space Between Us. I think there's something very useful in one of his poems that I want to offer to us this morning. It's a poem entitled Blessing. And you'll notice in the poem that each verse begins with an occasion, begins with the word when a certain thing is happening, and then continues with the next verse saying, may this occur. When this happens, may this be your experience. And so what he offers really for us is a form for blessing. So let's hear this poem. And as I read this, I'd like you to recognize for yourself which of these occasions might resonate for you right now in this moment. So the when phrases are the occasions. So listen to them and see in what ways you might already identify. And then the may phrases, the phrases that begin with the word may, are the things that you're invoking or wanting to invite in. So here's the poem. When the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. When your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken you in a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the currach of thought, the currach is a boat, and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. And then the poem continues with what I might call these crescendos of may verses. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. I'd like to invite you this week to practice that particular form of blessing. Some of you are whispering, "Bless your heart, Larry." I can hear. So you've already begun. the practice. So begin with naming a situation or an occasion which you are anticipating in your own life. Or maybe begin by naming an occasion that someone else you know or care about may be anticipating, or that our world is in right now. And compose the blessing that begins with that phrase, when I am, when you are, when we are. Allow yourself to hold this experience in your heart and mind for a moment. It could be something like, when I'm exhausted beyond belief. Any of you resonate with that? Or when our world seems so dangerously overwhelming. Resonate with that at all? You can interact with me, it's okay. Or think about someone that you know when you can say, when you are facing a change you hadn't anticipated. Or when I'm approaching a week with trepidation. So think about what you would put into that phrase for yourself. I just gave some examples, some of which might fit you, and maybe there's something that would complete that sentence for you. When I am. Or you can think about the world, when we are. You got something? Yes? No? Now think about what's most needed in this situation that you've articulated. What do you want to call forth? What do you want to invoke from the situation for yourself or for another? And this becomes that verse as in the poem, may you, or may we. So perhaps in declaring a sentence with the word may, you can experience this as a way of deep listening to that situation that you've articulated, listening to your heart's wisdom, or listening to another and asking yourself, what's our deepest aspiration for them? Let's give that a try this week. When I'm approaching whatever it might be, may I experience this? Or think about someone you care about. When you're experiencing this, and you can name whatever that is, may this be your experience. And let that come from a place of deep listening to their aspirations and your deep hope for what it is that they might experience. Now, there's a way to understand blessing as something that might seem like we're ignoring the harsh realities of our life, but O'Donohue makes the point that in naming these blessings, we're actually facing them right on rather than ignoring them. Sometimes, he writes, when we look out, the world seems so dark. War, violence, hunger, and misery seem to abound, and this makes us anxious and helpless. What can I do in my private corner of the world that could have any effect on this march of world events? And the usual answer, he writes, is we say nothing. We then decide to do what we can for our own. And we leave the great events to others, to someone else to tend to. Thus, he writes, we tend to opt out when we may need to really join in. He concludes, we live in times when the call to full and critically aware citizenship, humanity, I might add, could not be more urgent. We live in a time when things can feel so bleak that we might not even be able to acknowledge and see the blessings of what is already. The blessings we're already swimming in can oftentimes nourish our heart and hold our spirit. In a time when we can easily feel so overwhelmed, so powerless, so forlorn in the midst of these times that we are in, we can still find ways to be a blessing. Not in a sanctimonious way, but in a way in which we take back our own power and align ourselves with the power of the Spirit to create what could be, to create possibilities for healing and for transformation, for creative and collaborative and grounded responses to these times. So this morning I say, rather than throw up our hands in the air and say, what's the use? We might encourage one another again and again to throw up our hands in the form of being a blessing in the places where our own lives intersect, even in the smallest ways, with not just what is, but with what wants to happen within us and through us. Jesus reminds us, you are the light of the world. What does that mean if we really take on that understanding of ourselves? Not leave it to someone else, but take whatever bit of light that we can be and to be that light in the corners of the world where we are. So let us pray together. Holy God, inspire and uphold us as we dare in whatever ways we can to embody your light in our lives and in our corners of the world, so that we may once more be moved to do the blessed thing that is ours to do. So may it be. Amen.